So, after taking about another 9-10 month break from doing this online stuff, I do think I'm about ready to get back into it again, though, as usual, I have apprehensions, and maybe that should be a theme for anybody who has watched any of these videos that often, that I'm apprehensive about just about everything I do. But no, now my apprehensions are a bit different than they were in the past, because everything I have in place now is so that I can do exactly what it is I want to do without any interruptions. Now, what is it that I want to do? This actually took a bit of time for me to figure out, because for the past couple years, I think what I was doing online was pretty much aimless, although it, of course, had consistent themes, interpretation of media, more recently social concerns. It still didn't come to anything. It didn't have an overarching order. And that's really what I wanted to solve, to figure out what that overarching end was to be. And I do think I figured that out, and it's going to be posted progressively over the next few months. I wanted to say weeks, but I don't know, but that'll get into the problem that I'm going to discuss. But the long and short of this overarching theme or end is that I want to create a kind of community for self-formation. I don't mean self-help, I don't mean self-development, I mean formation. And this is a radically different kind of thing, because formation is a kind of progressive work, a progressive labor of development. It is not a once-and-done type of thing. It cannot be taken up into what the rest of the capitalist system feeds us. Rather, it is something that we must do because we are aware of ourselves, in a way, in part, exactly counterposed against the capitalist system. And what that means is that, well, we can't just say that we're going to meditate and do this or that and read, Ray Dalio's principles and become rich strongmen and then go out into the world and conquer. I do not agree with that narrative whatsoever. But that's what this can too easily come off as. Rather, what I see self-formation as being is a kind of development of one's potentialities to their fullest extent. I think the LGBTQ community has realized this most completely in the modern period as this kind of de facto doctrine that we should be true to ourselves against all odds. Now, of course, this too has been taken up into capitalism, and there's a theoretical problem there as to whether or not any project of this sort will not be incorporated into pre-existing capitalist structures. But that's a slightly separate question, and that is work that I have to do behind the scenes, and it's work that I'm still doing. But all this is a long way to say that what I intend and what I want to work towards is something very radical, something very big, something very extreme. And what it ultimately amounts to is a kind of self-recognition tantamount to what the LGBT community has already established. And in some ways it will dovetail with it, though where they have emphasized certain romantic attractions, gendered affiliations, and so forth, I'm not really concerned with those things. What I am concerned with is the character of one's thought, one's behavior, and one's sense of self. Totally and completely understood. These things are only on the sidelines in that community, and I should know, because I participated in it a little bit. But it's not enough. It is not enough, and I want to do something more than that. And so that is the plan. Now, the problem with this is, I have thought about this in so many different ways over the past few months that to put it into practice definitely and determinately is extraordinarily difficult. Because at one level, this is a very lofty goal. At another level, it requires day-to-day concrete practices that are going to accrete into the end I have in view. It will come not merely in waves, but in crashing waves. And these waves will be of the utmost force against everything that attempts to get in its way. That sounded a lot more prophetic than I wanted it to be. Now, what I have in mind is something like a system of content and a system of interpretation which will expose what currently exists and the ways in which it hampers individual not only self-expression, but self-action. That is, at the broadest level of abstraction, For instance, the things we do, the constant practices that we have to participate in, these prevent us from living who we truly conceive ourselves to be, not simply in a gendered or romantic sense. If I have an idea in my mind, I have to spend time to put it into practice exactly as I want it to be, and I have to acquire the resources to do that, and so on and so forth. But it just so happens that we live in a system of commodity production and consumption, which prevents my doing so in a manner which is efficient for me. I have to go through the monetary system, the commodity system. I have to go and design methods for myself to make time for myself to do all these things. And all of this not only is mediated through time, but requires time. And that's a long roundabout way of saying we do not prioritize in the systems that make life possible the expression of human agents in those very systems. Rather, to use Freud's phrase, we allow what is unconscious in us to come to the fore. There are numerous systems of production which, as opposed to bringing forth human fruitfulness, companionship, and self-expression, instead express visceral desires and things that really need not be produced at all. For instance, all the labor that goes into making a very nice suit. Well, why do we even need to wear a suit to begin with? Because we want to express and signify a certain degree of competency and a social prestige and so forth. But if we simply didn't, allocate that labor, we could do something entirely different. And so it is in this way, in this cycle, if you can see the picture I'm trying to paint, that instead of doing things that enable us to become more fully ourselves, we do things that repress ourselves. Marcuse calls this repressive desublimation. And so what I want to do in a way is to break open those systems of repression. So again, you can see where the LGBTQ analogy kind of comes about. But now again, the problem is, I don't think in a very linear and straightforward way. And you can tell this probably by just listening to me talk. My thoughts circumlocute, to use a word that a professor used to describe my essays. Now, I have worked to do away with this as much as possible through careful outlining, often multiple times over, of the thoughts I want to express. But this is also still very time-consuming, and as a consequence of it, I will get so lost in the thoughts that I want to put out that what I really wanted to say doesn't even get out there anymore. And this is a big problem, because if I have things I want to say, well, again, they are being repressed into something that I really don't want to say. And of course, it is still a subtle problem, because at some level, it all amounts to something I want to say. But again, that's not a theoretical issue, bracket that. But the real issue, the real thrust of it is to continue to practice these kinds of things day to day, to build this abstract system accreting through day-to-day practices. I have to be certain of what it is I want every single day, and I have to do what it is I intend to do every single day with the utmost consistency. And as I've reflected on myself and the way I think about things, I'm not very consistent. And that's a problem. Because if you're not consistent, then nothing is going to develop. And the only solution I have thus far been able to create to deal with this problem is consistently meditating on my goals, on what it is that I want, and why it is that I want it. And I don't know how well that really works. It works all right, but it still is very hard, and I don't know why. My gut intuition is to say that I simply have not gotten to the swing of this kind of thing very often. I now, on Sundays, go through everything I write during the week, and I categorize it, I reskim through it, delete shit that really I don't need, and then I put it into folders so that if I need it in the future when I post to a blog or something, I have it where I need it. So this is one step that has put me where I want to be. This is why I've been putting stuff out on my blog consistently, and maybe I'll be putting stuff out here consistently too. But even with that in view and that in mind, I still have not been able to get into the swing of real content production. And that's because the things that I want to talk about and things that I'm interested in are very weighty, very academically, intense. And so they require a good deal of research. But this itself also requires time and consistency and effort and what we could call a mental labor, which is strenuous and which tires me out. And this is really the finality of the problem, that not only do I want to do this big overarching labor and this day-to-day labor to orient it towards that overarching thing, but then there is this third absolutely necessary mental labor which I need to do if I'm going to do anything at all. And really, it's, I think, where most people are going to stop, with any project they undertake, and this is what gives the illusion of spontaneity in what people do. They don't think about the orientation, not even at this second order of how that itself is oriented towards what they actually want to do. But then that third order of that final total orientation of what really matters in this world. What really, god damn it, if I died today, this is the cross I would die on. Very few people think about that. And for good reason. It is tiring as hell. So, that's what I am now apprehensive about, what I don't really know what to do about. But I will keep on trying. I am working on a video right now. It's going to be about an hour or so long, probably a little bit longer, with the interviews that I'm conducting for it. It's a more systematized and rigorous version of some of the things I'm talking about here. But more so with a view towards laying real concrete foundations to all of it, rather than just saying, oh, I want to practice self-formation. This video is going to flesh out a lot of what that means as slowly, carefully, and methodically as possible. So that's what that is. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks so much for watching, listening to me ramble. I hope you have a good day.